Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Aaron. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I appreciate that intro, brother. It really means a lot to me. Thanks for doing this. I was telling everybody he's my security. You know what I'm saying? He's a little tougher than I am these days. So it's good to have him around. JT, Scott, I appreciate the things you had to say. Steve, he alternates you and Barack on that list quite often. So I don't know how thanks. I don't know how he really feels, but thanks for having me do this. It really is an honor. I told Rachel I was going to be speaking at the Roundup, and she says, "What's Steve Lee have to say about that?" I said, "He's the one who asked me." And so anyway, but no, it's good to be here. It really is just an honor. I remember coming to this Roundup. I was always trying to get sober before I got sober, and I was always either locked up or in some rehab or just struggling in some local AA meeting. And I'd pull up to the Roundup, and it looked so beautiful, like what was going on inside and the people and the smiles. And I swear to God, like I thought it was something that could never happen for me. You know what I mean? It'd be like if somebody tried to convince me to join the NBA or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm 41. I'm not particularly good at basketball. Like, I appreciate your concern, but that's not going to happen. That's how I felt when people were like, you could get this if you just, it's just like, no, I really don't think I can. And that just wasn't true. I'll tell you a little story. I was, is that me? Is that, okay. Okay, cool. I was at, I was always in and out of somewhere, and my brother was living in my dad's house, and in 2012, and my grandma, my dad's mom, God rest her soul, she had passed away in January of 2012, and in the summer of 2012, I was at my dad's house for some reason, I don't know, like doing laundry or what, but my brother goes, he used to call me Mid, he goes, I need to talk to you. I was like, what's up? And he goes, yeah, the cemetery called where grandma's at. He goes, and they asked to speak to Dad. He's like, and I told him, he's at work, you got to call back. And he goes, they called back the next day, and they're like, yo, we need to speak to your, Ron Ham. And he goes, he's at work, like, you're not going to get him during business hours. Like, what do you want? I'll talk to him about it. And they said, they go, well, we have some business. He's trying to buy like a cemetery plot. And my brother goes, y'all need to get your act together. He goes, that was for my grandma, and that was 6 months ago. And they said, no, we know about your grandma. They said, this is something different. Just have your dad call us. And when my dad got home from work, my brother said the cemetery called, and they said, you're looking to buy like a grave, a plot. And he goes, my dad's face dropped. He goes, yeah. He goes, that's for your brother, me. And, and I was never supposed to know that. It's not like we were arguing and I was giving him trouble and he was like, he was just quietly playing in my funeral. And I didn't even know. So, to be here is a blessing. It feels a little funny wearing a suit. You know what I'm saying? Everybody got the suit jokes out of the way in the lobby. I'm grateful for that. But something, the true story, in 2010, I was briefly sober. I was always briefly sober. And, I was living in my dad's house, and I wasn't working yet, so he was kind of like supporting me, like, buying me cigarettes or whatever. And I think, he felt bad about supporting his son in his mid-20s, fresh out of rehab again. And so he made up like a job for me. He goes, hey, he was doing these diet clinics. He goes, you can do marketing for us. He goes, I'll pay you $300 a week, which is about what he was paying for me to live anyway. I just think he felt better, me working for it. And I was like, well, I need to get some nice clothes. And so I went to Men's Warehouse to get some suits. And at the time, I thought Men's Warehouse was like Rodeo Drive. Like, I didn't know it was possible to buy a better suit than they sell at Men's Warehouse. And I got these suits, and I would go to like these tanning salons and these like hair places and like pass out business cards with like trays of like undecorated fruit. And they would just look at me like I was an idiot, and I would leave in my suit. And, I quit doing that. And I started, what I did was I would sleep until noon, screw around at the house, watch TV, eat pizza, all this stuff, and then I put on my suit before I went to an AA meeting, and you'd be surprised how differently people treat you when you're wearing a suit. And like, in reality, like, I looked like one of the most well put together people in the room, and they'd ask my advice. They'd be like, you think I should change sponsors? I'd be like, if he's not directing you to God, I would. And and in reality, I'm saying, I'm making $300 a week living in my, but anyway, I am grateful to be here. I believe I struggled with alcoholism, long before I took a drink. When people used to say that, I'd almost like cringe a little bit, like, years and years ago. But I really did. It was like, it would be like every day of my life kind of felt like starting at a new school, like out of state. It'd be like if my parents moved like the summer after my 8th grade and I had to start a brand new high school in a new state, like hundreds of miles from anyone I knew. Like how I would feel like on that day, just kind of like acutely aware of everybody, and everyone's so comfortable and they have friends and they're they got their Letterman jackets, and I don't know anyone. I'm the youngest, and you're acutely aware of mannerisms and what you think they mean. And my problem is I feel like I'm really interested in what other people are thinking. I think I know what they're thinking, and then I react off what I think they're thinking is fact. And I'm in damage control mode now. If I think you think I'm a wimp, then I act a little tougher. Like if I think you think I'm not funny, then I kind of go out of my way to do. And if you're on the outside looking at that, it almost looks like it's not a pretty sight. And I was always worried what people thought, and I always had this idea that the right combination of external stuff would make me feel good. In my life, ever since I used to hate, I swear to God, if you ever go see a therapist or rehab or whatever the hell it is, they always ask you, or at least they always ask me, they're like, what did you enjoy, before you started drinking? Like, what were your hobbies? I was like, you mean being paranoid and fearful? Like, I don't get the question, And, I swear to God, I don't. And I know what it's cute. They think maybe if you think of a childhood hobby, you used to skateboard, maybe you can pick that up and, not drink Warm Heaven Hill. You know what I'm saying? But it didn't, it never worked that way. My earliest memories were just worrying, constantly. And the funny thing is about external stuff, I fall victim to this all the time. But, I think that if I get certain piece, almost like furniture in a house. If I can arrange things just right, the right reputation, the right clothes, the right image on social media, whatever the hell it is, the correct respect from my wife, you know what I'm saying? Which I don't know if that'll ever. But the point is that I'll be okay. And when I get those things, it's the inverse almost happens, because when you think something's going to make you feel okay and then you get it and realize it doesn't, now I'm really screwed. Because at least when I didn't have this stuff, I could dream well, if I got that, it'd be straight. But then when you get in, it doesn't. It's like, well, I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble now. And anyhow, the first night I drank, I'll never forget it. It was in 8th grade. A bunch of my buddies went out drinking in 8th grade, for the first time ever. And they came back on Monday talking about how cool it was. And so they talked about how much fun they had and how they didn't worry about anything, all this and that. And then I noticed everyone in the class wanted to be friends with them. Everyone was running up I heard what y'all did. When can we do, and so they looked popular and cool. And I was just like, bro, I've got to get some of that. And so I went home and I got drunk that night. And I'm taking swigs off the bar, you know what I'm saying, and running back to my room waiting for it to hit. And it was funny. It's a funny thing that happened in my house, because a lot of times I hear people, when the first time they got drunk or whatever, it was at some party or some concert, and, the music sounded better, and, and the whole night. I'm alone in my bedroom. So, I had absolute proof that, nothing external changed. Nothing external was cooler. It's not, I was just sitting there, and when the alcohol hit, if you're a real alcoholic, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, and you stumbled in here, whatever, I could spend the whole hour trying to explain it. There's no way you'd get it. It just, I didn't know it was possible for a human being to feel that good. I did. If before that happened, if you said, how would you feel if I gave you $100 million, your dream relationship, all this and that, if I picture how good that would feel, it did not feel as good as sitting on my bed, drunk in 8th grade on Monday night. And I was a guy that I got in trouble rapidly. You know what I'm saying? I know everyone's story is a little bit different, especially yours. But I just started getting in trouble, and I had some run-ins with the law. And I remember I'm going to try to speed this up to get sober a little bit quicker. But my brother ended up catching 6 felonies and went to penitentiary. And then I turned 18 the following year. And a week and a half after I turned 18, I caught a felony too. And they put me in drug court, and it's in drug court, it's you stay sober and you report, or you go to penitentiary. You're already convicted. There's no more going to court. And I couldn't stay sober in there, and they put me in a rehab, and they gave me a furlough, which turns out they're my arch nemesis. If you want to see me get in trouble, let me go home for a weekend. And And I got drunk that weekend, and I got a DUI in a different county, and I got kicked out of everything, and I ended up going to prison. And I remember when I was in there, if you've ever been penitentiary in Kentucky, it might be like this everywhere, but they take you in on the van, they shackle you all together, they strip you down, they buzz your head, and then they stick you on the wall with these showers, and they spray you with some sort of grease. And you got to wait there, with hair all over you before you can rent all this. And I remember sitting there thinking, I was like, and I meant it like that. I was like, I'm never drinking again. I was like, when I get a job, I'm going to have my money, my parents cash my checks, and I'm not hanging around the old crowd, none of that. And I meant it with all my heart. And the night I got home, when you serve out, they kick you out at midnight. At midnight, your sentence up, and that's when you go home. And my mom picked me up at midnight and drove me home. And when I got home, I had arranged for a 12-pack, to be sitting outside my dad's house, and got good and drunk as a welcome home gift to myself. And I learned pretty quickly, that was when I really got the first dose of, not being able to control this myself. But one of the key things that happened, I never understood why I couldn't get sober. I wanted to be sober long before I actually got sober. And I got in a lot of trouble. I cried a lot of tears. People would tell me, they'd be like, pray on your knees, and I do this. I'm just hear me out. And everything they said I would do as far as I knew. And I remember praying on my hands and knees and falling asleep praying on my hands and knees because I didn't want to quit praying too soon and not get the glory of God, shown upon me. And I would either get kicked out for drinking, or I'd get drunk as soon as I got out. And anyway, I ended up getting a big fight with my brother, and it's a long story. I was mad. I got stabbed, and it was bad. And when I go to court, they determined I was the aggressor, which was not really, a huge surprise to me at that point. And they got me court ordered to this rehab downtown Louisville. And I'm in Louisville, and after I'm there about a month and a half, I just decided to bounce. To this day, I never understood people that are in treatment that don't want to be in treatment. Stay. What I'm saying? I advise you to stay, but there's no fence, and no guns, so you can just go. And I would go. And this particular time, when I left, I was gone. It was a funny thing. All I really wanted to do was spend Christmas with my family. So I thought, that was the story I told myself. And I left on December 23rd, with the best of intentions. If you had put a pistol to my head and hooked me up to a lie detector and said, are you going to do anything wrong? I'd say, I wouldn't even think. I'd just be like, no, absolutely not. I'm done forever. And I wasn't done forever. And a few days after that, I got in some deep trouble. I ended up catching a couple more felonies, a couple more assaults, and I was court ordered to this place for assault. I'm a convicted felon, which they don't like. I left. I caught a couple more assaults and a couple more felonies, and I remember I'm sitting in jail, and I have a hole in my face that I had to cover up to smoke a cigarette, and I'm all beat up, and I'm looking at some serious time, and after a little while in jail, they got me sent back to the healing place. There was this attorney in the program that took my case on and got me back in the healing place. And there was this little kid. This is one of the things the bricks that saved my life. In the house, my little safe haven that's built. This is one of the. And there was this kid behind the desk that if all of y'all, if I brought him in here right now and let him talk to y'all for 5 minutes and then polled the whole room, none of y'all would like him. He would get a 0. You know what I'm saying? Just an irritating guy. And he would sit behind the desk, and everyone in detox. And this is a Skid Row mission. This is not. Don't take offense to this, but this is not Cumberland Heights. People aren't carrying their own luggage. People are hobbling in, with 6 layers of clothes on. And he would kind of, the sicker you looked, the little smart alecky, the more he would be, and which is a very, I don't know, but his point. I remember I asked him one day, I was like, why do you give these people a hard time? There's no why do you do that? Do you get a thrill? Does it make you feel? And he goes, I'm not giving anyone a hard time. He goes, I'm just not giving them a good time. He goes, you know why I feel the way I do for these people? I said, why? He goes, almost everyone, I'm the one who does the charts. If you've been in here before, when you give me your name, 95% of the time you have a chart. You've been in here before. He goes, everyone comes in here, gets the solution flat, absolutely free, 365 days a year. He goes, they choose not to take it. He goes, they go out, screw up, and then they come in here crying, bumming cigarettes, tell me, I was like, I didn't expect to like get kicked in the stomach. I was like, I mean, he was exactly right. He was exactly right. And after that, I'll fast forward through the graphic stuff, but from I got kicked out of there in 2007, and I didn't get sober until 2016. And something funny happens. I was always a chronic alcoholic. I was always, since I was about 17 or 18, daily drinker, the whole 9 yards. But it came to a point where if I was awake and had money or alcohol, within 45 minutes or an hour, I'd be passed back out. I'd chug some booze, I'd have a cigarette, I'd chug some more booze, have a cigarette, pass out. And when you're drinking that much, you don't sleep 8 or 10 hours like you should. You sleep like in 90 minutes, maybe 2.5 hours, and you wake up half drunk, dry mouth, half sick. And I'd just have a few more drinks, another cigarette until I just fell asleep. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I would live around the clock. And if you do that and you go in public, you go to jail. And so I'd go to jail a lot. And there was this, hey, I'll tell you, Steve knows about Don M., God rest his soul. He was my lawyer when I went to penitentiary. There was nothing he could do, I assure you. But when I got out, I caught those assaults and then the felonies, and he got those reduced. Well, then I went on a little spree, and I got in a fight. I got in a fight downtown, and they arrested me for PI. Somehow they screwed up, and I got ROR. Like, I'm on thick probation, and they let me go. I'm like, oh, this is nice. So a month or two later, I get into an argument with somebody and ended up kicking in the door at an apartment drunk. And they got me for like disorderly conduct, this and that, and public intoxication. I don't know how I got out that time. Don't ask me. Maybe somebody bailed me out. But then not too long after that, I'm waiting to go to court for all this, and I get another DUI. And when I'm going to meet Don at the courthouse, this nice young woman shows up, and she goes, "Are you Aaron Ham?" I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Here, I'm going to be representing you." She's talking. I said, "Whoa." I said, "Where's Don?" She goes, "Oh, Don couldn't make it." She goes, "Don't worry, I work with him. I know your case." And I was like, "No," I was like, I'd rather work with Don. I said, "Why don't you just pass the court date over?" You know what I'm saying? And then Don will come next time. She goes, "Don's not going to be here next time either." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Do you have a schedule right here? What do you do?" And she goes, "Don's not representing you anymore." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Why not?" And she goes, she said, "He's afraid continuing to represent you is compromising his integrity with the court." Because he keeps appealing to their good name, you know what I mean? And then I'm right back in there, like he can't even look the judge in the face and be like, "I think it's going to be different," so. But it's like, I wasn't even mad. Like, I swear to God, I remember standing there like, God, it's probably smart. And anyway, but I finally moved down to Nashville, and it's something different happened when I came down. I was in Nashville in rehab 3 times. My parents paid for treatment a couple of times. Then I went to a bunch of state places and all these horrible things. And then they're like, "Well, those didn't work. Let's pay again." So I came down to paid. I was in rehab in Tennessee 3 times in a row. And something was different. I got hooked up with a sponsor that for the first time was actually working the steps. Not just like calling me and giving me off-the-cuff advice of what he thought. And all, like actually like, "Hey, we sit down, we read this book." I was like, oh. I was like, people actually do that? Like, I thought the steps on the wall was just like a crucifix at church. Like it represented something, but like it didn't, that was 2,000 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And I swear to God, before I got sober, if somebody put a gun to my head, like, and been like, "Hey, like a mafia dude, it's like, my son needs help. I know you've been around. What do you do?" I'd be like, "Oh, halfway house, go to a lot of meetings. Don't gamble." I had no idea. The steps were actually the program. And anyway, so I came down to Nashville. I get sober for a little bit, doing good. You know what I'm saying? For a time, all went well. You know what I'm talking about? And I ended up getting in a little trouble, going to jail. About like usual. And I'm sitting in there, and I had wrecked everything. I was talking. My mom's in town. God bless her. I was drinking. I was going through a bunch of stuff. Well, I ended up in the hospital, and they did the next of kin call. I had a pneumonia in my lungs, all this stuff. So they called my mom. This is on my sobriety day, a day or two before. My mom comes down. They finally release me out of the ER, and she comes back to my apartment. In my apartment, Jesus, like, I'd been drinking almost 8 months. I hadn't taken out the trash once. I was peeing and puking in Dixie cups, and they're scattered everywhere. And when I get drunk to get up and get a drink, and I bump the table, and they'd all spill on the carpet. And I wasn't washing my clothes. Nothing. My mom would send me pizza. She didn't want me to starve, you know what I'm saying? So she'd send me my favorite pizza, my favorite brand, my favorite toppings, my favorite crust. And I couldn't eat when I was drinking for a few different reasons. But I was starving, so I would just get the pizza. It'd be smelling so good. They deliver it, and I would take a bite and chew it and just taste it and spit it back out in the box. And then I'd do that to the whole pizza, a couple pizzas a week for months. And so there's just pizza with mold and gnats and all types of gross stuff in this apartment. So my mom gets me out of the hospital. She comes back to this apartment, and she just starts weeping, like entering the door, just sobbing. She was like, "We got to get this cleaned up." And I was like, "I'm sick. I'm sick." And so she goes to Walmart and to go get cleaning supplies, and I found $100 in an AA book. Believe it or not, I didn't know who would look at. Hand of God, true story. 520s, and I went and I got some booze, and my mom came back and finds me drinking and just lost it. And she's crying. She's got her cleaning supplies. It's so sad. And she goes to a hotel. She leaves crying. And I love my mother very, very much. And so I go. I knew where she was going. She told me the hotel, or somehow I found. I don't know. And I drive to the hotel. She begs me not to leave. I'd say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She was like, "Just don't go anywhere." So I left anyway. And the first stoplight, I rammed a car. DUI, hit and run, all this type stuff. Or accident, I don't even know. You get the point. And it was DUI number 5. It was only second offense due to statutes in different states. But I'm sitting in jail, and I ain't going nowhere. And my car was totaled. I didn't have insurance on it. I get the 72-hour little emergency eviction from my apartment. I got no job, no money, no license, no friends, nothing. And I'm sitting in jail. And the funny thing is, I swear to God, for that, because I had some time and I relapsed those 8 months. If somebody, in that 8 months, all I was doing was praying. Like any coherent memory, I'm begging God for another chance. And I'm like crying and like letting the tears land on my big book, to just, to symbolize, how desperate we really are here, And I go to jail, and it's funny, if somebody had come to me in jail, and if they were like, this could be the answer to your prayers, like this could be a good thing, like they'd have left on a stretcher. Like I wouldn't have cared if it was a chaplain. I wouldn't have cared who. Like it was. The one thing I was positive of more than anything else in my entire life, more than the love I have for my mother, more positive than anything, I knew my life would never be good again. And it's not like some little cynical teenager, angsty in the basement, like, I told you I want peanut butter and jelly. It wasn't like, no, like, it was like, I had every reason to believe that. And I get out, and I'm calling the people close to me, and I'm saying my goodbyes without tipping them off. I was going to kill myself. And I'm calling my old sponsor, my parents, and like, just want to let you know, everything you did for me, I'll never forget it, that type of stuff. And my sponsor, he goes, I met with him, and I don't know how or why, but he goes, why don't you come back to AA? And I said, bro, I know it won't work. And he goes, how do you know that? I said, dog, y'all probably went, Steve knows me, Morris, I was in rehab 16 times. I'd been arrested 33 times. I'd been in penitentiary once. I'd been in the hospital more times than I could count. Psych ward more times than I could count. Mental hospital 3 times in one summer. I was on probation in 2 states simultaneously. I'd been in drug court. Y'all might not. I don't care if you believe this or not, but I really don't. But you know how you go to rehab for a month? You know what I'm saying? It was like a month in rehab. I was in inpatient rehab for 4 years. The healing place was 16 months. Mar in Atlanta was 5. Buffalo Valley was 5. I was at the ranch twice in 2 stints. That's 5. VOA and JDAC together were 5. And what's that, 36 months and whatever the 5. I'm telling you, and I told Sam, I was like, bro, I've been to rehab and all these different. And he goes, have you ever worked all 12 steps? And I thought that was like that's the best. I remember I was like, well, what do you think? I was like, I just told you how far. He goes, no, that's great. I'm glad you've been to rehab a bunch. He Have you ever worked all 12 steps out of the book wholeheartedly as if your life depended on it? Every word, read it. Everywhere it says write, write. Everywhere it says pray, pray. Every message says do. He goes, give it back. Everything. The whole 12 steps. And I thought about it, and I was like, actually, no. I was like, I usually stop. And he looked me dead in the eye. He goes, I guarantee if you do that, you'll be sober. And I knew he believed that, and I knew he was right. Like I said, I never understood that. I thought, and it's kind of like, it'd be like if somebody went to the gym a lot and never exercised. You know what I'm saying? And like gets like the matching Under Armour gear and like drinks the smoothies and, makes friends with everybody. Like, why are you on the elliptical and not the tread? Okay, better range of motion. Cool. You know what I'm saying? And then, and then after like 3 months of going to the gym, I'm like, my BMI is the same. Like anyone who's in shape's just genetically built that way. It's not in the car. You know what I mean? Like, if you're lifting weights, the smoothies and commitment and outfits, that all helps. But independent of the weights, they don't do anything. And I was doing everything but the weights, swearing AA didn't work. And, people would come up to me and they'd be like, boy, if you just ever, I'm like, if I just ever what? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about? Like a judging. And anyway, I started working the steps and I started getting free. And, one of the things, step 2, I love step 2 because I always believed in God. I really did. I believed he was there. But I didn't believe he was interactive in human lives. Like, I really didn't. And I wasn't even trying to be, like, blasphemous saying that. Like, because if you disagreed with me, like, if I pray for the suit to be brown, like, it doesn't turn brown. Like, I can pray all of, God's up there. I love him. I feel like he loves me. But it's just, you don't just pray for something and get it. And that was my proof. And here's what happened. This is no kidding around. I was all over the place. I was in Twin Cities, Minnesota, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Owensboro, Kentucky, Danville, Kentucky, LaGrange, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Hohenwald, Tennessee, Burns, Tennessee, Dixon, Tennessee, Nutley, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia. I was either in jail or penitentiary or sober living or rehab or a combination of, in all those places. And every single one of them, they would take us to a meeting or somebody would come in. They always had the leather-bound big books and made a big deal of their highlighters. They had them in a place when you could see them, not in their pocket, taped to something at the top. And they would say, and they would go, and they'd say, I was hopeless and broken, you know what I'm saying, and I worked these 12 steps and, I try to get back and my life's different. I'd be like, who's this guy? Look at this nice khakis, you know what I'm saying? And then I'd go to a different state. I'd go to Murfreesboro, and somebody would come in and, 12 steps changed my life, and I'm just like, who is this guy? And it hit me one day, this last time I was sitting around, I was like, either there's some, like, underground secret society who is for, like, their tenets are to fool Aaron Ham, like, trick me into believing that, AA can help you stay sober. Whenever I'm in Minnesota, they got operatives up there hosting meetings, like, they're all actors. Either that, or I just wasn't doing it. And it hit, like, not like a white light experience, but it was kind of like an epiphany. It was like, oh, geez. So I started doing this work. And lo and behold, something got better. It's one of my favorite things is I always thought that I needed things to be happy. Like I was saying in the beginning, like if I get this, if this happens, if X transpires, I'll be happy. And I set out to get those things. And my problem is I have a good heart, like I always have. You know what I'm saying? And like, so when all this trouble befalls me or what, it's just like, what, why is this happening to me? I didn't realize that, like, you inadvertently step on toes, like trying to always, like the book, arrange life to suit myself. And this time it was really just because I was so broken. I had nowhere to go, that all I tried to do was go out of my way to be nice to people. When I came in, like you so many of y'all have the benefit, like not even knowing me. Like I wouldn't go out of my way to be friendly to you. And I had a guy say, he goes, I want you to smile and greet somebody, everybody you see, as if they're an old friend you haven't seen in a while. I want you to pray every morning, pray every night. Don't do anything that you think dishonors God. You know what I'm saying? Try to be mindful of other people. Give. I don't care if you have it or not. Give. When you see a guy on the corner with new shoes begging for dollars and he can wear, instead of just for your sake, you're right, he is full, but give him $1. Just obnoxiously go out of your way to make other people's lives better. Now, I'll tell you, I was never successful at anything. I failed my sophomore year. I was a sophomore in high school 3 times, and they were being generous getting me to a sophomore. I swear to God. And I wasn't good at business. I wasn't successful selling, stuff I shouldn't be selling. Nothing. And I just didn't have a knack for it. I don't know what it was. And now, like I say, whether it's business or whether it's relationships or friendships or whatever it is, all I try to do is make sure the other person gets a little bit better deal than I do. And everything I touched, figuratively speaking, has turned to gold. Like and I'm not even talking about like business. I just mean, I'd never been invited to a wedding when I had been here. Do you know anybody that's like 32 years old that's never been to a wedding? Like your high school bestie didn't invite, I had no friends. I had nothing. And now my life is full. My biggest problem is how much my phone goes off. Literally. My biggest problem in life. It's just my relationships, they're better. And one thing I always shied away from, was amends. I never really wanted to do amends. And I have a couple really cool stories. I usually don't share them because they're kind of long, but, it's funny how God can take, things that seem horrible and turn them into something beautiful. Not just like correct them or not like glue it together, like really I got a funny story about my boy JT right back there. So listen to this. I'll tell you something. Actually, I'm speaking at 202 one night, and some guy comes up to me that's in Samaritan House, and this dude can barely, it looks like his eyes were loose in his head. He was sober. He was struggling. And he goes, I'm supposed to get out of here in a couple of months. Like, can I call you? I'm like, yeah, call me. Here's my number. And so anyway, a few weeks after, whatever it was, a month or two after that, I call my boy JT, and I said, what are you up to? And he goes, I'm down here bouncing at 10 Roof. And he goes, come down here and hang out with me. I was like, there's no harm in that. And so I go down and hang out with him, and he's checking IDs at the door. And a group of these college kids come up, like 6 of them, and they hand them their IDs, and he, one by one, he goes, fake, and takes 6 of them, and they're all pitching a fit, like a docile fit, you know what I'm saying? But like, come on, dude. And he goes, he hands the IDs to me, and he goes, if you want them back, talk to this guy. And I said, what do you want me to do? He goes, charge him $60 and tell him you'll give him the ID back and let him in the club. Like it never happened, 60. And I said, bro, and he looked at me, he goes, they always pay. And so I'm like, I'm put on the spot, and so I charge them, 5 of them charged 60. I made an executive decision to charge a nice young lady 20. And so I had $300 or $320. And I go to JT and I go, I'm not in this, I'm sober. I'm gonna, I say, here's the money. And, he goes, how much is that? I said, $320. He goes, just give me $160. And I was broke. And I was like, oh, okay. So I kept $160 and I called my sponsor. And I felt horrible about it. I called my sponsor the next day. I was like, yo, bro, something happened last night. He goes, what happened? I was like, well, it's a long story. I was down at the bar with JT. He goes, what happened? Just tell me. I said, we kind of ended up blackmailing, a little group of Belmont students, and he goes, I told him, he goes, you need to get that money back. I said, I'm not giving the money back. I said, that'll make me look weak. I'm saying? I'm not doing that. And he goes, and if he ever told me, like, really do something, I didn't buck, but I was like, dude, that I really don't. He goes, give it to the universe, do something good with it. And so I gave $10 to church that Sunday, and I gave $10 to church the next Sunday. So I'm 140 deep in the universe. I'm into the universe. And I'm getting off work one night at like 11 o'clock in Burns, and my phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's it was the guy from Samaritan. He goes, hey, I met you at 202. I was like, okay, what's up? He goes, they had a halfway house lined up for me. He goes, but now they're full. I got nowhere to go. He goes, I got money. I don't have a ride and nowhere to live. So I was like, I'll get you. And I leave work at 11, drive to Nashville, get there at like 12:15, scoop him up, take him to this halfway house. He's getting orientated till like 1:30. I'm sitting there. I'm in school. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm sponsoring a gaggle of guys. And I don't have time for this. And they go, I said, are y'all straight? I was like, I need to go. And the dude goes, yeah. He goes, all we need is the money. And the guy goes, how much is it? And the halfway house guy goes, $300. And then my boy goes, I only got 160. He was short 140. And I promise you, I was just like, oh, it was a tight week too, and I ended up paying it. And that guy ended up staying sober. And this is a corny example. The other ones are. But it's funny, you have a group of college kids squandering their education, lying to their parents, breaking the rules, breaking the law, and then they meet JT, and his, propensity for, criminal enterprise, what I'm saying? And they just, they collide, and somebody gets sober and gets living arrangements that never otherwise would. You know what I'm saying? And my life is like that. You know, my sponsor, he'll tell me to make amends. And I'm like, well, I don't, you know, what about this? He was like, I don't even think the amends will change anything. He goes, something happens to your heart. He goes, but that puts you in a position you would never otherwise be in. I made amends to my father. You know, I'll tell you a couple stories. My brother, I was coming up on 2 years, and I was getting ready to chair a meeting at 2:02. And my mom called me. My dad's in Florida. My mom's flying back from Florida. And she's in Atlanta. And she calls me and she goes, I have one brother. She goes, your brother's being rushed to the hospital. They did the next of kin call. They don't think he's going to make it. And I didn't think I really did. I asked my sponsor, I go, do you think I should go up there? He goes, yeah. But I've had the next of kin call done on me twice. This was the second time my brother had it done on him. I'm not being funny. I thought it was a little better safe than sorry type of thing. And so I decided to drive up there. My mom texted me, and she goes, she misspelled it. She goes, he's dead. And I said, are you serious? And she goes, yeah. And I said, is Sean dead? And she said, yes, blunt force trauma. And he was fighting. We always used to, my dad had this barn in the middle of the woods. Everyone would party and drink, and everybody fought over there. It's all we did. It's what we did for fun. And my brother was over there fighting with the guy, and he got beat with a tire iron and stumbled back to my dad's house and bled to death in the house. And so I get up to the house, and it's all taped off, and the detectives are still there. And I'm like, yo, where? And I knew who did it because my mom knew who he was hanging out with that night. And I said, where's the dude? And the detective's like, oh, don't worry about that. I was like, no, I'm worried about it. I was like, what? You know, what's the dude? Is he in jail? Is he hurt? You know, is he in your cop? You know, where's he at? And he goes, we're not charging him at this time. And I was like, I felt like I was dreaming. I was like, what are you talking about? In Kentucky, I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not arguing with the Commonwealth, you know, but apparently there's a stand your ground law in Kentucky, and this guy, my brother's dead and can't talk, you know, and this guy's saying, well, he came after me and that's how this happened, and they just rolled with it. And just, you know, my brother, I'm not saying this should or shouldn't be. Please don't think I haven't like maybe, you know, it was just a lot to swallow at that time. And so I'm stewing about this, and I got to decide what to do with it. And it's one of those things like to this day, I hate when people talk about like what they're gonna do or what they would do. You ever be sitting with somebody and you see something on a movie, and the dude's like, if they said that to me, it'd be, you know, it's just like, okay, all right. But the point is, I really had some decisions to do. I don't think I was gonna drink over it per se, but I had to figure out what I was gonna do about this. And I remember telling my sponsor, and I was like, I don't feel like this guy, you know. I don't remember what I said. Don't let me lie. But I was having trouble forgiving him. And I remember my sponsor goes, I want you to think of 2 or 3 of the worst things that you've ever done, talking about me, Aaron Ham. And I thought about it, and he goes, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe you spit, these aren't mine, he goes, maybe you spit in your mom's face. You know, maybe somebody, you know, they looked at their kids on a hungover morning and said, you know, my life would be better if you were never born. You know, maybe somebody stole all the Christmas gifts or abandoned, or I killed somebody, I don't know. The worst thing, 2 or 3 of the worst things I've ever done, he said, close your eyes and think about them. I said, okay. And I thought about them. And he goes, do you think those things are an accurate description of Aaron Ham? And I said, no. He goes, do you feel bad for doing those things? I said, of course. He goes, would you take them back if you could? I said, absolutely. He goes, your problem, Aaron, is you judge people based on the worst thing they've ever done to you. That's it. We could have a 10-year good history. If you do one thing I really don't like, that's all you are as a person to me. And anyway, he goes, the $1 million question, he goes, those things that you did, he goes, do you want mercy for those? You want to be forgiven? He goes, or do you want justice? Do you want whatever punishment you got coming to you? I said, well, obviously I want mercy and forgiveness. He goes, good. He goes, it's either mercy or forgiveness, mercy and forgiveness for everyone on earth, or justice and punishment for everyone on earth. He goes, you're a part of everyone on earth, and you get to pick. See, I always wanted mercy and forgiveness for me and you to pay the penalty. You know what I'm saying? And I was mad until you did. And it just doesn't work that way. If I want forgiveness, I have to forgive other people. That just cracked the door, like barely enough to be able to pray for this guy. I prayed for this guy, and I can see myself in him. Like, all the stuff I did drunk, like, I've got more assaults than I can count on 2 hands. Like, I've driven drunk more times than people in this room, multiple times over. that could have been me. Anyway, it allowed me to get past that resentment. There's a thing that I'm a big, people talk, you see in like the love movies, like, I love deeply, like I hate deeply. You know what I'm saying? Like if you, anyway. But there's nothing I can take to God. There's nothing I can take to my God, the one I pray to, and say, if you think of the most horrible thing that's ever taken place on the planet, and if I take that to God and say, listen to what this guy did over here, can you believe that? My God never says, whatever you do, hold on to that anger forever. Just ball it up in a little ball, stick it right behind your left ventricle, keep it there. It's good for the human heart. It won't affect your relationships with love. It won't skew your view on society. It'll help you sleep better. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a little, little hatred, Old Testament style. You know what I'm saying? Keep it. And that's never the answer I get. So anyway, going through the steps in this process, it's crazy. When I got sober, I swear to God, like I had nothing. It's almost trendy now to say, and I shouldn't be judging people. Listen to me judging people. I don't know your story. It might be true. It's not common, but I would check into rehabs with everything I owned on me. And I remember, if I was having a good month, it would be one of those black trash bags. And I remember I checked in the healing place one time, and my dad, I always said tied them tight and I'd have to rip them to open them, and the bag's no good. And one time my dad, I didn't know it until I got there, but he had put a zip tie on it for me. So all I had to do was cut the zip tie, and I still had the plastic bag. And I remember thinking he deserved like a Nobel Prize. Like I remember when I saw it, I was like, that's genius. I almost in tears. And I remember that vividly. And anyway, but the point is, all I did when I got sober this time, like I said, I tried to look out for people. I tried to do nice things. Every good thing I have in my life today came out of me operating against my will, but instead on spiritual principle. I had a sweet gig. This guy, Andy, hired me in Burns twice when I didn't deserve that. Well, I don't know. Who knows? Whatever the point. He gave me chances and hired me. And the first time I screwed it up, it was in my first sobriety. I relapsed and I left. And I left, just left him high and dry. And he hired me back when I got sober again. And I have this cushy job on main campus. They got a full cafeteria, soda machine, ice cream, private offices you can sneak into and text whoever you want, and they asked me, they're like, you want to go work at LTR, the extended campus, a couple days a week? That's not as cushy. There's no one that cooks for you there. There's not a fountain, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to do this. But I was like, well, they took a chance. I mean, it's probably the right thing to, and I go over there. Well, one of my job responsibilities was driving a van to a Wednesday meeting, a meeting I had never been to before and never would have stepped foot in for any reason on the planet. But I have to drive the guys to this Wednesday meeting. That's where I ended up meeting my wife. You know what I'm saying? I never would have met her otherwise. And now I'm married. We have 4 beautiful children, everything like that. I always wanted to help people. And when my dad died, it was a beautiful thing. 8 days before my dad died, keep in mind I had no idea he was going to die. He died from a sudden heart attack. I made a second amends to him. I was finally making a little money, and I said, Dad, I want to pay you what I owe you, because the first time he wouldn't take it. I didn't have any money anyway. I tried, he wasn't being a saint by turning it down. I was just broke, And this time I had to twist his arm. I was like, I want to pay you this money, this and that. We had this really beautiful talk. He finally said, okay, and I had a 10-year payment plan. That's how big the number was. And it wasn't like $20 a week either. And we had this beautiful talk, and before I left, we give each other a big hug, and I said, I love you, Dad. He goes, I love you too, Aaron. And me and my dad, like he wasn't like withholding love, but like we weren't on like a kayak together with like moosed hair, like taking, pictures, it was kind of, it was in between, but it was a beautiful moment. And 8 days later after that, I got a call saying he died of a sudden heart attack. And if you had told me before he died, if an angel came down and was like, your dad's going to die, this is the last time you're going to see him ever in this life. Anything you got to say to him or anything you got to say it now. If you had told me that, the conversation I had with him that day would not have been any one word different. And I have eternal peace with the relationship I have with my father, trying to do the stuff AA tells me to do. After he passed, I had that lingering amends that technically owned the universe. And I had this bright idea to start this center, this for, indigents and to give back. And we did that for a couple of years. All I wanted to do was help people. All I wanted to do, for real. And after a couple of years of doing that, maybe 3, true to my word, a group came along and said, hey, we want to do something like this and we want to do it structured more. And I was able to contribute some stuff to that organization. I didn't do any of the work. I'm taking 0 credit for it. But we did meet and something spawned from it. And they've gotten like 3,000 people into treatment for free to this day. Like they're one of the biggest referral agencies in the country for getting people. Nothing to do with that, deserve no credit, don't get any money for it, nothing. But it's just like that's an example of like situations that the principals put me in that I would not otherwise have. I told you I'd been arrested 33 times, 23 were in one county where I'm from. The rest were speckled, throughout Kentucky and Tennessee. And in Kentucky, I was a convicted felon. I'm a violent offender, all the whole thing. Not bad violent, just, hit you violent. For real. What I'm saying? I don't want anybody thinking I'm like, But in Kentucky, yeah, don't think I'm a bad guy. And but anyway, when they sent me to penitentiary, the judge after my lawyer gets to talk, the prosecutor gets to talk, and my lawyer gets to talk, and the judge, he was a nice guy. He goes, Mr. Ham, he goes, after everything I've heard, you're a threat to society and to yourself. He goes, he gave me my time. And I remember walking back, that's a long walk, and I was like, I can't even argue with that. And but the point is, if you haven't been convicted of certain crimes and you don't get in trouble for 5 years, you can apply to get all that expunged. Not sealed, not amended, expunged, just poof. And I appealed I got a lawyer to do that, and they expunged my entire record. I'm not a convicted felon. As far as Kentucky's concerned, I've never stepped foot inside the jail. You know what I'm saying? I have all my rights back. Today, I like to think, I don't want to say respect to the community because that sounds bad, but like me doing this was so far out of the realm of possibility that it's hard to imagine. My lowest, people ask me all the time, parents and stuff, usually parents, sometimes spouses. They come to me and they know a little bit about me and they're like, what did it take? What happened? Like what finally was there was some event. And really there was 2 things that happened, and one of them was I had this condo that I was living in that didn't have any furniture. It had a couch and it had a table with 3 chairs and it had a bed, a mattress. And I was holed up in there, and there was neighbors above me, below me, and on 3 sides. And I remember laying there either, totally, blacked out or detoxing sick. And as soon as I wasn't detoxing, I found a way to get money. So my only memories are just deathly ill detoxing. No phone, no cable, no nut, just holed up in here. And I could hear neighbors above me and below me putting the leashes on their dogs, like, come on, Buster, and calling people. They're like, we're going to meet at the pool this Saturday. And I would lay on the couch just sobbing, just not even making noise. The type when your eyes just fill up with tears and then you blink and they pour out. You're not making noise. You're not breathing heavy. Your body's crying, like your soul's leaking. And I just remember crying, and all I wanted was a life. All I wanted was to have. That was my only way. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about relationships. I didn't care if I ever had a license again. None of that. I was like, how cool would it be just to have friends and have places to go and have like a job and just have a regular life and not disappoint my parents. Everyone I ever loved, ever cared about, or ever held dear to me was just not even angry with me. Just like, I heard a guy say one time, and it's true, just a mixture of pity and contempt. Just almost, not even growth, just like their life would be easier if I wasn't in it type of thing. And all I wanted to do was change that. And now I have that life today. I like to think I'm a good father. My record's clear. I give back to the community. I sponsor anybody that asks me to. I try to do stuff like this, and I owe everything good I have in my life to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is not to sound cute. There is not one single good thing I have that I would have if I wasn't doing this work. I'm really grateful for the people who didn't give up on me. In Louisville, and I don't blame them one bit at all, but how if somebody gets a silver chip tonight, everyone rushes home, I would get silver chips and not a soul would speak to me. I'd just be outside smoking, waiting for my dad to pick me up, because it was such a joke. But I appreciate the people who haven't given up on me and have walked me through this program, and it's the joy of my life to do that for other people. Steve, I'm gonna I'll probably wrap up there. I will. There's one story actually I am going to tell. It's corny. I'll warn you ahead of time. But I told you when when I was sober for that brief period before I had my last relapse, and I was always begging God to help. I really wanted Him to wave a magic wand, or like just make me wake up one day and not want to drink, and like, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted magically, and I ended up wrecking my car and losing absolutely everything, and I thought it was the worst day on earth. And there's this story, I don't even remember where I heard it. I don't think it's real, but I'll call it the illiterate janitor. And there was this guy, he dropped out of school before he learned to read or write, and he's working at this sawmill, little country town. And he works there, plunging the toilets and mopping up spills, all this crap. Well, after about 30 years, the company's bought out by a big conglomerate buying all the sawmills, and they change policy. And they say now the janitor, like if you have to replace a sink, you have to put in a work order, you have to get online and order the parts, you have to give reports, all this crap. And the janitor goes, man, I can't read or write. I can't do any of that. And his old former bosses that are now employees, they go, we know, brother. They go, there's nothing we can do. We're not the owners no more. You got to go. And so this guy tries to get a job everywhere. No one will hire him. They want him to fill his applications out online and work cash registers. And, so he's distraught. Well, one of his hobbies is whittling these little figurines out of wood. He's been doing it for years, got hundreds of them. And he's sitting outside Kroger, distraught, whittling one, almost done. And this guy comes out in a suit, much like this one. And he goes, how much you want for that figurine? And the guy goes, well, I've never sold one before. He goes, I understand that. What do you want for it? He goes, take $100. And the guy goes, yeah, I'll take $100. Sells it, and the business guy goes, man, you should sell these. He goes, you could probably get a couple hundred. This is handcrafted stuff here. People in Franklin will eat it up. And they go, okay. And so he starts selling them, comes up, makes a couple $100,000, got it in a duffel bag, too nervous to keep it in his mattress no more, goes to a bank, says, I want to open up an account. And they go, what? Yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, they go, what's in the duffel bag? He goes, a couple $100,000. I want to deposit it. And they roll out the carpet. Manager takes him to office. We'll get you set up money market account. Good in hands with us. And he goes, how'd you get that money? And the guy goes, I'm in business for myself. He goes, oh, really? How long have you been in business? He goes, 9 months. He goes, whoa. Do you have any employees? He goes, no, just me. He goes, you're a one-man show. Started business 9 months ago. You got 200 G's cash. He goes, yeah. And the guy goes, that's impressive. He goes, fill out these forms and we'll get you all set up. And the guy goes, I can't fill them out. I can't read or write. And the manager sits back. He goes, whoa. You're telling me you did all that stuff? You're self-made, you're balling. He goes, and you don't even know how to read or write? And the guy goes, yeah, that's right. And the bank manager goes, just imagine where you'd be right now if you could. And the guy goes, I don't have to imagine. I know exactly where I'd be. I'd be at the sawmill on First and Market working for $8 an hour, And so is my life, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I love you guys. Hey, Steve, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you know how much this opportunity means to me. Thank you, brother. Love you guys.
You guys would just circle up.